Yeah, here's the event. Want it. Uh, okay, let's move on. So yeah, first we're just gonna kind of recap what we did over the course of the quarter. So yeah, the main takeaway that you should all have is that you were able to kind of architect and host a full stack application. You were able to kind of understand all the fundamentals of working with cloud computing in general, as well as get some hands-on experience with AWS, which is great because it's very popular. Sorry, I'll pull up the image. Okay, so yeah, our first workshop was just an introduction. The main takeaways that you could take away from that were kind of like why somebody would use cloud over like an on-premise solution, and then why somebody would choose AWS. We talked through what virtual machines are, talked through how we implement security in cloud, particularly with IAM, and then did a demo where we deployed a web server using one of those virtual machines. Okay. Our second workshop was on containerization and using Docker. So yeah, if you want to learn more, whatever, be sure to look back at those slides. And then we talked through how scaling is done with cloud. And then Elastic Beanstalk as an example of that. And then we did a demo with React, specifically deploying a front end with Elastic Beanstalk. Okay. Our third workshop was on DevOps and CI/CD. So we talked through kind of how you can automate deployments when there's changes to some sort of code repository. We talked through AWS code build and code pipeline as examples of CI/CD services. And then we did our demo where we automated our deployment of our. Our fourth workshop was on databases and serverless computing, where we talked through what serverless computing is, AWS Lambda as an example of that, talked through the different types of databases, and then DynamoDB as an example service that AWS provides. And then finally, we implemented our backend for our app. Okay. And then we closed out, or rounded out, I guess, with infrastructure as code, where once we had our full app, we wanted to deploy it or wanted to write the code in a scalable manner so that we could deploy it in multiple environments. So we leveraged, or we talked through a variety of different infrastructure as code solutions, such as Terraform and CDK. And then we actually deployed it ourselves with infrastructure as code. Sorry, with CDK. Okay, so that was just a short recap. Let's quickly talk through some next steps if you're looking for things to do to build off of what we did in each of the workshops. So specifically with the first workshop, although we talked through what virtual machines are, like the basics, and used EC2 a little bit, there's a lot more to kind of learn there if you want to work with cloud. Specifically, I'd recommend looking into what an AMI is. It stands for Amazon Machine Image. It's basically just like a template for an EC2 instance. So yeah, you can learn like how they're made, kind of how to choose one, how to use an existing one, and that kind of life cycle. You can also look more into EC2 monitoring, how that's done generally. It's either done on the node with CloudWatch, or I think there's an agent that you can run that reports additional metrics to CloudWatch. And then also learning more about how to leverage AWS's like network abstractions. So just like with a regular network, there's a notion of like a subnet and it's NAT gateways and VPCs. AWS has their own versions of each of those that you can read more on and leverage. Okay. For our second workshop, since Docker is really popular, I definitely recommend learning more about that. Last quarter, we did our project kind of used Docker Compose, which allows you to run multiple containers at once. So that's something that could definitely be interesting to look further into. And then related to our demo, if you're interested in web dev stuff, ACM Hack has some awesome workshops for that. So definitely check those out. Actually, any questions so far before we keep going? Okay. For our third workshop on CI/CD, I'd recommend checking out GitHub Actions, since that's free if you have a GitHub account, which is also free. Or GitLab also has similar integrations that you can use. You can look into like adding linting to your code. So that just means that it will enforce some sort of like a code syntax and like style. So like maybe you only want to use double quotes instead of single quotes if you're writing in Python. You can add something to your GitHub repo that enforces it, so that whenever you commit a change, it'll always have that particular format. And then you can also look into leveraging parallel deployments. So, for example, a very common example is that you might have a development build and a development kind of version running, and then a production version running. And ideally, you could just kind of have a development branch that deploys to development and a production branch that deploys to production. Okay. And then related to databases and serverless computing, we really kind of went through these topics pretty quickly, but there's a lot of content there to explore. So maybe exploring other types of databases in more details and examples of services that meet those, I guess, database models. You can also look into other serverless computing services. AWS Glue and Athena are other common ones that are used for data processing. And then kind of a recent development, there's a notion of like a data lake and like a data warehouse relative to a database. So you can kind of look more into what those are, why one might choose to use them, and then and kind of like what services AWS offers that meets those use cases. Okay. And then finally, for infrastructure as code, you can kind of try to explore that a little bit more, because I know I wrote most of the CDK code in the example, but actually trying to do that yourself, maybe for another simple app, or translating what we have to Terraform, or leveraging ACM CDK as opposed to just like the strict kind of CDK that we use. Those are all great ways to test your skills. Okay. So yeah, any questions on that before we move on? What to kind of do as next steps if you're interested? Cool. Yep. Pass it off to Orion.
All right, so what's next? What's actually the future of cloud? So looking at generative AI models are actually training on the same hardware which is used for cloud computing. That's like a big industry which cloud actually captures. And looking at the rise of AI as a service, people have to realize that cloud is a easier, safer storage at the end of the day, and companies might move to a proprietary solution like cloud itself. And the best idea about cloud, which also is emphasized especially, is the renting specialized expensive hardwares, which is like TPUs or tensor processing units. So like cloud units you can rent as storage when you're trying to run like ML models. Moving on, it's the event-driven architecture and IoT. So we're moving to a more serverless architecture, which is guarantees like less problems compared to us architecture with a server. And it's also pay per event, which basically means if you're not using a service, it's ideal, it's cheaper compared to other services. And the biggest idea which I agree with is it's leveraged by IoT, because I think IoT is the next big thing with smart homes and other wearable devices that might connect together using the help of cloud. The other big idea is about real-time processing, which is recently new development, but we try to optimize the compression and movement of files in such a way that it's faster compared to other services. And because of the large scale storage and fast scalability, it's a big IoT application that can be leveraged by cloud. Finally, the last thing is the edge computing, where instead of moving data around, we process it faster close to the generation source and in a large volume. And because of its real-time application, it's considerably faster than other services. And again, it's leveraged by IoT and real-time application, which are again on basis of cloud. So why are we moving to cloud? More and more companies are actually transitioning to cloud simply for the reason of how it's a better option than a singular storage. If not completely cloud, a lot of companies are moving to a hybrid or slash a multi-cloud solution is becoming popular in the industry. So what's next for future of ACM Cloud? Our current ideas are actually a Google Cloud platform, which is we plan to build a ML chatbot, or build from scratch, or use Amazon Web Services to have service deep dives. Currently, it depends on the input of what we receive from our workshops, and I think that's majorly how we decide to choose the next topic moving forward. And the details are still being finalized about that. We also have a research project running on, which is about distributed systems theory. And the research topic is leader election algorithms, synchronous and asynchronous theoretical models. During this track, we will try to optimize an existing leader election algorithms to improve time, space, message complexity, and hopefully at the end of it, we create a new one from scratch. Aim to publish this by the end of spring quarter. Lastly, it's our consulting partnership, where we're trying to leverage or ask corporate companies if you could partner with them in non-profit for practical hands-on experience about cloud, and hopefully in turn lead to recruit. And that's the end of the meeting. So let's have pizza.
I think we also have a feedback form. So yeah, it's the same as last time, but we will kind of take this into account as well as like what our interns and officers have experience doing for planning for next quarter. Specifically the workshop series. So yeah, if you haven't filled it out, definitely do that to give us some. Yeah, like Owen said, feel free to grab more food. We want to try to finish all of it if we can. So, yeah. Did you grab any?
I'm good. I just ate it.
I'm gonna grab another slice.
Oh, one slice? Little bitch. Or two slices.